talk about music, should begin with a tune. It's pretty catchy, right? Probably weren't expecting him. And as somebody who researches music and takes his musical taste very seriously, I'm risking a lot of street cred and, frankly, personal embarrassment by starting a TED Talk with the Biebs. But this song, which in my defense I knew very little about until a couple of weeks ago, came out in 2012, and it sounds a lot like what you hear on Top 40 and the Billboard charts these days. And people complain about the fact that popular music all kind of sounds the same. I should know, I'm one of those people that complain about it. That music can be reverse engineered with the right producers and the right team writing the songs. You can put these things together, and voila, top of the chart hits. Not a problem, right? And the fact remains that I'm here to tell you today that this is actually not necessarily the case. That a co-author at the Kellogg School of Management named Michael Mauskopf and I research popular culture for a living. There are worse ways to spend your time. And we've actually found that the songs that do best on the charts are not those that sound the most similar, but those that are actually optimally differentiated. That is, of the 25,000 songs that have appeared on the Billboard charts since their inception in 1958 until middle of 2013, the songs that do the best and stay on the charts longest are those that sound similar to what else is going on at the time, but not too similar. Something about them gives the audience something that they can grab onto, but not so much that it alienates listeners. It takes more than a music marketing machine just to pump out top hits. Something about musical uniqueness is actually important. So maybe, just maybe, this talk today will renew your faith in popular music and the people that listen to it. So what I would like to do is to tell you a little bit more about this optimal differentiation, what it is, what it means for popular music. But I should probably start with the data that we use to construct these things. And that story begins about a decade ago in MIT's Media Lab. Two graduate students wanted to better understand the world of music. They wanted to know about the songs themselves, and then they wanted to crawl the web to find out how artists and bands and genres are written about. Their company, the Echo Nest, has been quite successful and now actually powers the data analytics behind a lot of the music streaming services. About a year ago, they were purchased by Spotify. They now boast data on over 30 million songs and 3 million artists. Perhaps best of all, they've made that data available to developers and academics like me. So let's take a look at what this acoustic data actually looks like for a popular hit. So what you see before you, and what may feel sacrilegious, devoid of feeling for some of you, is the acoustic summary of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. And I should say that, of course, this doesn't capture exactly what the song is. It can't. These are summary statistics based on acoustic attributes that have been pulled from the digital recording of the song. They can't. But what it does allow is comparison across a broad swath of songs. So just to put this in perspective, the Echo Nest boasts data on more than 30 times the number of songs that Pandora has. And so these are the 11 attributes that we actually use in our analyses. And some of them should look pretty familiar. You've got key, tempo, time signature, major or minor mode. But some probably look a little unusual. These are the Echo Nest's secret sauce attributes, which are developed from the acoustic data that they extract. And I want to focus your attention on one, just as an example, because by now, hopefully you're wondering, what exactly is danceability? Good question. Danceability is the combination of a song's tempo, its beat strength, its overall regularity, and its general rhythmic tendencies. And so you put these together, voila, you have danceability score. Now, saying something is 0.926 danceable doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. But what it allows for is comparison to lots of other songs. So just for an example, Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, a true classic, has a danceability of 0.21. Remember, we're not talking about awkward high school danceability. So it should come as no surprise that across the history of the charts, songs have becoming, on average, are becoming more danceable. And that songs that are more danceable tend to do better. That's the nature of the Hot 100. That's sort of what they do. But we're really interested in whole songs, which is how people actually listen to them, not individual attributes. So, what we wanted to consider further was the fact that songs are listened to in context. And not just the personal context, the time, the place, the emotional connection you make with a song, that time in high school when you were just completely obsessed with Dave Matthews because you knew that he wrote that song for you and your girlfriend. That maybe just me. So there's the personal context, and then there's the competitive context. Songs aren't listened to in a vacuum. You hear a song and you compare it to what else is out at the time. You situate it. Songs are competing for limited listener attention. So we wanted to figure out a way to place songs contextually in the general sound of a given time. So we created a measure called typicality. This is basically how similar is each given song from all of the other songs on the chart in the previous year, based on those 11 acoustic attributes. And we take an average of this, and of course we factor in genre, because we don't want songs that look to be similar based on their attributes, but actually sound very different, to come up as actually being closer to each other than they should be. So we give every song of these nearly 25,000 songs a score from 0 to 1 on how typical they are. That basically places them in the context, the musical context that they enter into the charts. And just to give you a frame of reference, the Bieber song had a typicality score of 0.89. Whitney Houston's song had a typicality score of 0.76. This tells us that the former sounded an awful lot more like what was out at the time than the latter did, which brings us back to this idea of optimal differentiation. When we put this typicality, when we compared typicality to chart outcomes, we found that those songs that were pretty typical, but not too much, were those that fared the best. Said more specifically, even when we consider all of the other elements that could contribute to a song's success on the charts, its genre, who the artist is, these attributes by themselves, individually, typicality and songs that are more similar to each other but not too similar actually contribute to songs doing better on the chart in terms of their overall performance and staying on the charts longer. The sweet spot is a song that has enough about it to let it stand out from everything else that's out at the same time, but not so much so as to alienate the listeners. And the interesting thing about this is this actually holds when we not only look at the previous year, but even the week before the song comes out. So there's something that's going on in the way that people are listening to music and situating those songs that's allowing them to be something to grab onto. And thinking about the Whitney song, the Whitney Houston song, again, was on the charts for number 1 for 14 weeks, while the Bieber song barely reached the top 20 and was gone in 2. Sure, these are cherry-picked examples, but it's actually indicative of our findings overall. We find this tremendously interesting. Again, this goes against this idea that music can actually be reverse engineered, and there's some formula that people can put in place. So what does this all mean? Certainly, we're dealing with the Billboard Hot 100 here, which is already a homogeneous group of songs. And in fairness, they're getting a little bit more homogeneous over time. They're becoming more similar, but not much. In fact, this idea that we need to think about, this idea that we think songs are starting to all sound the exact same needs to be revisited. So I want to leave you with 2 ideas, which I'll repeat again. First, that music can be reverse engineered. Yes, there are elements and attributes that can contribute to a song's success. Sure. That neglects one important thing, the competitive context into which a song is released. It doesn't take into account what else is going to be coming out at the same time. So as artists and producers try to think about, okay, what is going to make for a successful track, they can't possibly know what their song is going to be entering into. So if they have an option, they might as well be interesting rather than generic. And second, and related, it pays to be a little unique. Yes, a strong Twitter following and the right producers and the right team of songwriters, all of these things can actually contribute to a song's success. We're not denying that. That is relevant. However, there needs to be something for listeners to grab onto as they process songs, as they listen, and they sift among everything that's available. So in order to do that, that requires some creativity. And as we look at our data, we think someone who actually does a pretty good job of this is Adele. The average typicality of her songs in our data, which go up to mid-2013, they don't include the most recent release she just had, is about 0.75. And obviously, she's been tremendously successful with that little bit of differentiation. So our advice is really to be creative. Do something that differentiates and distinguishes, not so much so as to alienate, but enough to be meaningfully memorable. We hope and we think that there is hope for music yet. Thank you.